When did you get married and start your family and all that?
I got married in 1962. I was a soda jerk at the local drugstore in Highland Park. And that's where I met her.
You finally get out of school, get a job, you have a child, you're married.
Bought a house.
Life sounds good.
Bought a house, yeah.
And you come home one day and said what to your wife?
I said, guess what, honey? I joined the Marines today.
What did she say?
She didn't believe me at first.
What year was this?
66.
So the war, it wasn't to 68 levels, but it was pretty common knowledge of just how bad it was over there at that point.
Yeah,
so
we just started bombing the north, and it was getting heated up.
Why did you make that decision?
I felt like it was my duty. I mean, America had been great for me, you know. I mean, my daddy died when I was 14, but yet I wound up getting a college education. My country was good to me. I felt like I should repay it.
When'd you get there?
70. I was there basically the whole year of the 70. So that it was winding down. They were already pulling. We were the last A4 squadron there. At that time, there was one A4 squadron, one A6 squadron, and one F4 squadron as far as Marines go.
So you flew the A4E Skyhawk.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the war. Before you went to Vietnam, like where were you before you went over there?
Oh, Beaufort, South Carolina.
So you were here. You could see there were reports coming out about what was really happening versus what was being said by the leadership.
Our instructors were veterans. They were the ones that had just come back from Nam.
So you knew going in that a lot of that didn't match up, and there was a lot, and you saw the protests and all that stuff. Did you see, parts of that division of realizing this war's not going well for whatever reason, as far as the sentiment in America and what's happening there and all those things? Like, did you sense that where you were there?
No.
Yeah. No. You were not in that position to, yeah.
We were too damn busy. Yeah. I mean, we were short-staffed. All the grunts and the air wing, they were all trying to pull people back. They weren't allowed to send anybody up. They could not increase. They had to decrease. Yeah. So, for instance, our guys in the flight line, they worked 12 hours on, 12 hours off. But on that 12 hours off, they had to pull things like guard duty.
Right.
And they were on, they didn't have a 5-day week.
Right.
My neighbor across the street was in the Air Force. He was a machinist with the Air Force down at Saigon area. They actually worked 8-hour days, 5 days a week. He only heard fire one time the whole year he was there.
What year was he there?
68.
Oh my gosh.
He said one time they had a rocket come in that landed somewhere in their area, to the point where that he worked part-time. He had a part-time job with American Airlines working on their airplanes.
Is that right?
And that was his war. I mean, he worked 8-hour days in a nice air-conditioned building and had 2 days off a week, and they would go into Saigon and they would, eat at the nice restaurants. Yeah. At Da Nang, we lived in open tin huts.
Everybody's war was
that was officer quarters, mind you. That was
everybody's war was not the same war.
Exactly. Yeah, the Marines' idea was quite different from the Air Force. On one side of Da Nang, we had the Marines were over there, and like I say, we had open latrines, everything. Yeah. On the other side, the Air Force had built a Holiday Inn minus the windows. They lived in air-conditioned Holiday Inn type, 2 men to a room. The war was not the same. And when I was flying, to get my flight time when I was a forward air controller, I had a friend that flew the Cobras. Yeah. So he came and would pick me up, and I get to fly front. The Cobra, the front seat is your turret. Mm-hmm. You have controls, but they're just like that. The pilot was he was second seat back, so he'd let me fly front seat. he came in one time and he said, we're going to fly this weekend, we're going to fly a mission that I can't tell you anything about it. And they wouldn't even record it in my flight book. We flew resupply for a Marine base in Laos. And mind you, we weren't even bombing there according to the official, but we actually had a Marine base camp in Laos that we flew resupply to. Officially, they had canceled what was called the Steel Tiger in Laos. We were bombing Laos continuously. There we carried slick bombs. There we would bomb the trails, the routes where, where they were bringing the trucks down and such.
The Ho Chi Minh Trail, essentially.
The Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Yeah.
Is what they call it, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It came out of North Vietnam, went down through Laos, and then from that it would cut right into South Vietnam.
And so you were bombing targets on the Ho Chi Minh Trail?
Correct. Sure, there's still not had, it still isn't classified, I don't think, now. At that time it was secret, but when they viewed us, when you first got the Nam, you had to go to your rules of war, as they classed them, but they were secret at that time. If a truck pulled 50 meters off the road in Laos, we weren't allowed to hit it. I don't know who made those rules, but that was part of our rules. So if they saw us coming, all they had to do was pull 50 meters off the road. We weren't allowed to hit them.
Did they know that, you think?
They're the ones that made the rules.
Explain that.
I don't know. I don't know who on our side agreed to it.
I know we technically, for a long time, it was not common knowledge that we were in Laos, even though we knew we were. It just wasn't a public thing.
You know that we got back no prisoners of POWs at all from Laos. Mm-hmm. Do you know why?
No.
Laos said, and this is when they're doing the Paris peace talks. Laos said, if you don't agree to have peace talks with us also, we're not going to include the prisoners that we have. Well, Kissinger was not about to admit still that we had been bombing in Laos. So he declined. He said, no, we're not going to even talk to you. We're only going to negotiate with North Vietnam. And they said...
And you're saying Kissinger wouldn't admit to it, but you yourself did those runs.
Hey, you can look right here in my logbook. Oh, come on, where's my... Find my times here. It's July 69. Any of your missions that were shot at, they did it in red.
All those you were shot at.
Yeah. The only way you can tell that these were Steel Tigers is you would have to, this is the coordinates on the map. We flew multiple missions, not just my squadron. I mean, we constantly, we had airborne controllers in Laos. Yeah. The Air Force had on the Confanam, NKP, Udorn. Yeah, those Air Force squadrons were daily bombing in Laos. We lost many pilots. Duckett from down here in Ringo, that's where he was shot down. That was an interesting story. He was shot down in Laos. They were talking to him on the ground. Sandy pilots were flying cover for him. They tried to get a Jolly Green in. This was, you could talk to his, I guess his mother's still alive there. The lieutenant colonel that was flying the Jolly Green Bird for the Air Force, he only had like a week or two to go before he went home. He refused to go in because they were taking ground fire. He wouldn't go in and pick up Duckett. Duckett was on the ground talking to them on his handheld. And the Jolly Green was coming in to pick him up. He started taking ground fire. The lieutenant colonel left, wouldn't go in with his, and this was told by his own crew members on that Jolly Green that day that they could not get him to go in to pick him up because he was afraid they might get shot down.
So what happened to Duckett?
We don't know. The last transmissions from his radio were in Vietnamese. He was never heard from again.
Is the belief that he was part of that group of prisoners that they wouldn't give up?
They think either that or he was just shot there at the time. But yeah. He was alive on the ground and the Jolly Green would not go pick him up.
Let's back up a little bit. You come home one day and said what to your wife?
I said, guess what, honey? I joined the Marines today.
What did she say?
She didn't believe me at first.
Why did you make that decision?
I felt like it was my duty. I mean, America had been great for me, you know. I mean, my daddy died when I was 14, but yet I wound up getting a college education. My country was good to me. I felt like I should repay it.
Curious how you felt about that sentiment after the war. Did you still feel that way?
Vietnam, we were doing good. We never lost anything in Vietnam. We may have lost one battle, but we made up for it the next day. Mm-hmm. We were winning. The people there, the VC would take, you wouldn't believe what the VC did to their own people. As far as stealing the food from them, taking everything from them. Yeah. We built hospitals for them. We built schools for them. When I was forward air control, I was with the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. And we worked at a fire support base, Ross, which was kind of between Chu Lai and Da Nang. We had what was called the Civil Patrol, where we went out and we basically lived with them. And we built schools for them. We'd take our corpsmen out. They would do health checks for all of them. They'd vaccinate the kids. They'd patch them up. The people loved us. It was the politicians back here in the States and the stupid chicken shit kids that did all the protest that caused them to. Basically, they cut off all of our funds, you know.
Yeah. But I guess the question I'm asking you is like you joined based on this idea of America.
Yeah.
You're proud of.
Oh, very.
Grew up here,
Yeah.
Patriotic.
Yeah.
But and I know a lot of this you knew because you were there, but things like Gulf of Tonkin, things like.
The things that came out afterward.
McNamara, saying, we're not winning and doesn't see a path to victory, and still left troops there for years after that. Those kinds of ideas. When you think about that and knowing you were there, you were in the middle of it.
Yeah.
How do you look back on that at this point?
Frustrated.
Yeah.
Because knowing. They're at the last, right before they signed the peace deal and we were bombing the North daily, and finally they let us hit downtown Haiphong and Hanoi. Mm-hmm. Later, the North Vietnamese admitted if we'd done that a couple more weeks, they'd have just gave up. They didn't tell us that till after it was over. But if they had let us do that 3 years earlier, that was another thing. The targets we were given, every target that we were given had to be approved in Washington before we could hit it. They would take the recon photos and they'd say, this SAM site here really isn't a SAM site. This is painted telephone poles. This is a decoy SAM site. It would be identified as that. They would still give that target to us to go hit, knowing that we'd have real SAM shooting at us, so we'd bomb a telephone pole. Did they care? No, obviously not. They would give us the same target at the same time of day every day of the week. I mean, it's like they'd look down and say, well, it's about 1300. It's about time for them to come over now. Everybody get your guns ready.
Some of that you mentioned there about when we bombed Hanoi, that's, I don't remember which link I sent you from Kit Smith, the F-8 pilot.
Yeah.
He said he bombed Hanoi. He was the first mission into Hanoi, and that was '66. They hit the power plant and knocked the power out, mm-hmm. and then went back to make sure they did, and they did.
Yeah. But we were not allowed just to openly bomb Hanoi, and we could not mine the harbor. So they were getting their supplies in from China and Russia daily. If we could have stopped that, but did we? No. Oh, another stupid rule of war. If if you were on the tail of a plane to shoot them down, if they were in the landing pattern, you couldn't shoot them. What determined landing pattern? If their gear was down. So if you're 50 miles out from the base on the tail of a MiG and he drops his gear, you can't shoot him. Which was one reason why our kill count was so low, because they weren't allowed to shoot a plane in the landing pattern. Landing pattern was gear down. And as you know, when you fired your guns, it took pictures. Yeah. So they verified, and they would chop your wings. You know, they would take you down for violating any of those things.
There's so many stories from the Vietnam War, other wars too, for sure, but the Vietnam War around that how the rules of engagement caused lives.
Yeah. And just prolonged it.
Yeah.
But to me, the biggest heroes of that war were the Sandy pilots. Do you know what the A-1 Sky Raider looked like?
Mm-mm.
It was a big, huge, single-engine prop plane designed at the end of World War II. But it could carry ordnance out the kazoo. I mean, it had wing stations. It took them 5 minutes to tell you what all they were carrying. But they could stay on station for like 10 hours because they could carry so much fuel. But it was a big, huge, single-engine plane. Sandys were the Air Force guys that if you got shot down, they'd send a Sandy out, and Sandy would stay over top of you until you were either picked up or confirmed gone.
Gotcha.
They wouldn't leave you. I mean, there was even one Sandy pilot, and he came in so low that he killed the guy with his prop because he had run out of ammo. I mean, that's just, those guys had gonads, like that. I don't know how they got in the cockpit.
Yeah.
But really, they wouldn't leave you. Once they showed up, Sandy would not leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those guys had all, if you wanted that in the Army chopper, what was the dust off?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those dust off, they carried no weapons. And those Army guys, they were like 18, 19-year-old kids. I remember I had a medevac one time. We had a Marine down, had a hot LZ, called in for a Marine medevac. A Marine medevac was 2 CH-46s and 2 gunships. That was one medevac. Because we were taking fire in our zone where my Marine was down, they wouldn't come in. Because their CO told them they better not come back with any bullet holes in their planes. So because we had a hot LZ still taking fire, none of my medevac choppers would come in and land. An Army pilot up there, two of those 18-year-old kids or whatever up there flying around in their Huey, they monitored what was going on. They came in and picked up my Marine. I had 4 Marine birds circling overhead refusing to come in, and this darn Army dude comes flying right in, sits right down, bullets flying all around, and picks up my Marine and leaves.
How many combat missions did you end up flying?
About 188, I think, is officially what they have me listed at.
The guy that was your flight instructor, so only the top 10% of graduates got to fly jets.
Only the top 10% got to fly. The rest of them went in the choppers.
And so, and tell me the story of how you ended up qualifying.
He knew that I wanted to fly jets. I mean, that's the first question he asked as a student. What do you want to fly? If you said, I don't care, well, that was his attitude. All right, I'll teach you the basics. I said, I wanted to fly jets. He said, okay, I'll see that you do. And like I say, anything we did, if a normal flight would take an hour for regular, if it took 2 hours until I got it perfect, we would stay out there. And like I say, he would, I have scars in the back of my helmet where he would reach over the tandem and smack me in the back of the helmet with his knee board. And the knee board's metal until I got it right. When we did close air support, our drop altitude basically was 100 feet. So we'd come in like a 10-degree dive angle, and then just as we got over the target, we would gradually level off so that we were at 100 feet, 450 knots when we released. Then we would pull up, 4G pull up. We were roughly a second in front of our own bomb fragments. And then we were dropping what's called snake eye, which is that's a bomb where the fins on the back of, when you release the bomb, these fins would pop open, and they would slow it down, and you could fly in front of your bombs, but you were like a second in front of your own fragments. If you dropped too slow, you'd hit yourself.
You know, any mission you go on could be your last one.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're processing that as well at the same time.
Oh yeah, that's part of it. But you also know that by you killing that guy on the ground, you're saving one of your buddies, because everything you do, when you're in combat, you're only doing one thing. You're doing that for your buddy. You know, you're not risking your life for God and country at that time. You're risking your life because you may be saving somebody's life.
How do you explain war and combat to someone? Any of us who haven't been there can't comprehend it. But to someone who truly does not understand the circumstances around the realities of what you're asked to do daily, and then the fears, or whatever you want to call it, of not coming back.
Well, you wind up in the situation where you are in Vietnam, in a combat situation. And at that point, you just want to get home. And you're willing to do whatever you have to do to get back home. And you know, to do that you and your friends all have to stick together. You have to be one. You have to help each other, because that's all you can do. And it's between you and God to get back home. And you're just thinking of staying alive, you know. And the best way to do that is to be one big unit. You can't be an individual when you're in combat. You know, you have to count on each other. And I see probably some of the closest bonds you'd ever make would be those that you've been in combat with, because you've both been through the same thing, and you realize that if it wasn't for each other, you probably wouldn't be there.